Yay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Late Night Book Chat. Thank you so much for joining us. It's not that late here. It's only 9 o'clock. Our time is when this will be airing.
Yes.
So, but yes, and it's really not late right now because we were pre-recording this. We were able to catch the wonderful Adrian Miller ahead of time. And so thank you so much for joining us on this.
Yeah, it's good to be with you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Andrew Meredith. I'm a fantasy author. This is my wife, Patricia Meredith.
And I'm a mystery author.
And Adrian Miller is a historical author of, some pretty cool things.
Yes.
That we're going to talk about today.
A wide variety. Yeah. So, we're very excited for tonight's interview and getting to know Adrian a little bit better. We got to meet you at Mountain of Authors here in Colorado Springs. It was a month ago now.
Yeah.
So.
And you were a pleasant surprise.
Oh my goodness.
We didn't know who you were at the time, and you got up on stage and entertained us for an hour. It was great.
Yeah. I sneak up on people that way.
Yeah. Like a good barbecue.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, who are you and what do you write?
I'm Adrian Miller. I'm the soul food scholar. My tagline is dropping knowledge like hot biscuits, which I endeavor to do with my discussion with you today. Right. And I write books on African-American culinary history. So I've written a book on the history of soul food, Black chefs in the White House, and African-American barbecue.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. And your latest book is Black Smoke.
Yes.
Yep.
Right?
That's the one on barbecue. Yes.
And this is mostly a history book, but it also has 22 recipes.
Yes.
Including, I told my daughter this morning, there's one here for alligator ribs. And she was like, what? I'd be like eating a dinosaur. I said, wouldn't you want to eat a dinosaur?
Rather than have the dinosaur eat you?
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. That sounds really good too.
Yes. So, what do you want to start with?
Well,
that's
ask our
true.
questions.
We always start with our random questions.
Yep.
Kind of break in there. Let's see. All right. These are just going to be different random bookish questions.
Okay.
Who's an author you want to read more books by?
Ooh, wow. That's a great one. I would say Toni Morrison. I've only read Beloved.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because basically my college girlfriend made it required reading. So, that's the way it goes. So I'd like to read more of her work.
Yeah.
I think we all discover writers from our loved ones in college who force us to read books.
Yes.
She got me onto PG Woodhouse. Yeah.
I was going to say, I sent a story there.
Yes. PG Woodhouse. Have you ever read any of his, Cheese and Wooster? And
it's 1940s, the lazy rich satire in England.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They're very tongue in cheek.
Very British. I love
very
it.
British.
They're so fun. Yeah.
All right. What are some of your hobbies outside of reading and barbecue?
Oh yeah. So I really enjoy just playing basketball. That's my favorite sport. I really love that. And other than that, it's really just working on my cooking game because I have a deep intellectual sense about food and stuff, but I really need to step up my game cooking. I mean, I got skills, but I just want to keep developing that. So getting better.
Is there one particular part, aspect of cooking that you're currently focusing on?
Yeah, it's barbecue because I think I've got soul food down for the most part. But barbecue, my rib game is tight. But when it comes to pulled pork shoulder and brisket, I got a long way to go.
Okay.
So I need, and those are the really popular barbecued meats right now. And then I would say the other thing is just working better, getting more adept at vegetarian and vegan cooking.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
That's wow.
Those are. That's a sharp contrast, right? I'm like, I'm gonna dive deep into the meat, but then I gotta get veggies on there too.
Right. Would you specify then? You say you're already master at soul food. Is that more? That's more cooking and pot cooking and stovetop versus pit and
it's usually one pot cooking, usually stewing or braising are typical, and then frying. But that like a typical meal I do for charity dinners around Denver is I'll make a first course of say Creole broiled catfish with coleslaw, and then fried chicken with greens, black eyed peas, mac and cheese, and cornbread, and then some kind of seasonal dessert.
Yum.
That sounds amazing.
That sounds amazing. We like to eat.
Yes. Yes, we love food. So I know when you were talking at Mountain of Authors, you mentioned there was some kind of like fruit or something that was a vegan barbecue thing. Yeah, what was that?
So jackfruit, which is from,
yeah,
Southeast Asia, it has become very popular in recent years as a meat alternative, especially pork. So
okay,
if you meet somebody who really knows how to work with jackfruit, they can make it taste and have a texture similar to pork. If they know what they're doing. Because look, I've had a lot of bad jackfruit.
Right.
So that's the qualification. But yeah, so you're finding more and more restaurants around the country that are substituting pork with jackfruit to great success.
I'm sure it takes a skill. It's kind of like making spaghetti squash into spaghetti. You know, you can mess that up.
Yeah.
Or you can hit it just right.
Or it can taste just like spaghetti.
Then you eat spaghetti. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Where do you find jackfruit?
So if you go to most Asian specialty markets like H Mart and stuff, you'll find it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's so popular now. I wouldn't be surprised if you could find it now in your typical grocery store.
Okay.
Not maybe the raw fruit, but
Right.
cut up preparation or pre-prepared.
So that would be better just to find like a vacuum sealed. Okay.
Probably, unless you can go on the internet now and find instructional videos for everything. But jackfruits are pretty large, so unless you're gonna cook a whole lot of it in one setting, I think trying to find the prepackaged stuff is probably a better portion size for most people who are trying it for the first time.
Okay.
And I want to say that I've seen it canned actually. Now that I think about it, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of which, is it okay to use frozen okra, or do you need to do it?
No, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what I use.
That's usually how I do it. Like when we're making gumbo and stuff, I end up using frozen okra.
Yeah.
Yeah, because especially in Colorado, I think that's a safe bet. And it keeps you from getting the real fibrous okra that tends to be woody. It's just not pleasant. So I cook with frozen okra all the time. Now, if I'm in the
South, because we're keeping the good stuff down south before they ship it up to us, and we just get the woody bits. Yeah.
Right. Now, if I was down south, I would definitely seek out fresh okra because fresh young okra is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Really amazing.
My turn.
Yep.
Okay. Would you rather read 100 books this year and never be allowed to read again, or read one book per year for the rest of your life?
Let's see. I got more years behind me than ahead of me, I think. You know what? I think I would go with the one book a year because I just can't imagine life not being able to read.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
I just can't imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. What one book are you reading right now?
Well, I'm reading several because I'm at work on my next book. But the one that I'm reading just kind of for fun and education is called Race and Reunion by David Blight.
Okay.
So it's about the Reconstruction era and how America was coming to grips with this thing called the Civil War. And how do we reunite when bitterly opposed sides, are still have intense feelings both ways. And so he talks about the national forgetting about the Black equality part of the whole equation. And so like this reunion happened in terms of just focusing on whiteness. It's a beautifully written book and it's really interesting. So that's the one that I'm reading kind of for fun.
Cool. Wow.
That's for fun.
Yes. All right. Well, this might be the same answer, but what was the last new book that you bought?
Because that book is old. Okay. The last new book I bought is I can't remember the name of it, but it was a cookbook by one of my friends. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I was in a new bookstore that opened in my neighborhood.
Okay.
And I've got two friends that were on the bookshelf, so I bought their books. I haven't gotten through them yet. I'm the kind of cat who actually reads cookbooks.
Yes.
Vish Blat and Blat is the last name, and then Sandra Gutierrez were the two authors.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So you mentioned bookstore. So what's your go-to bookstore in Denver?
So now things have changed recently with Tattered Cover.
Tattered Cover in Denver is still there.
Well, the main one
right?
is, right?
Yeah, the main one.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
All right, this may surprise you, but my go-to bookstore in Denver are essentially thrift stores.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't have one. I just go to a number of different thrift shops and just cruise the book section. So because I'm often looking for out of print books that are really interesting. and I find those in the thrift shops. Even when I travel, I bring an extra bag in case I find a really great used bookstore.
Yeah.
Where I can pick up some titles. Because there are a lot of privately published cookbooks, especially that, just they're not going to show up anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that, I love getting those. Like I found one from in Tennessee, and it was an African-American woman who was this family cook. And at the very back of the book, it said that she cooked meals for President Ford.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa, so stuff like that. I just live for things like that.
Absolutely.
Well, you think too, back to the especially 80s and 90s, there were so many churches that were publishing their church cookbooks for all of their secret recipes from the potlucks, and
that's my main go-to source for my books are set in 1901, and so I found a bunch of, and it's set in Spokane, and so we were living in Spokane at the time, so I was able to find these cookbooks that were published by the local churches for what they were cooking, and it was all these local,
and it was such a melting pot city at the time too.
Absolutely. So all sorts of different recipes, but then it's actually like authentic. I don't know. It's real people, real life, real recipes, right? And my favorite was finding one that the first line starts with "kill the chicken in the usual way."
That's it.
that was the first instruction.
Yeah, those old
as one does.
Yeah. So those old cookbooks are really interesting because they're written in a way that today we would think they're very sparse, but they assume a certain level of culinary knowledge. So they, like, why would I spend the time telling you how to kill a chicken? You should just know how to do that,
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is a lot. That's so much lost knowledge.
Absolutely.
We're not giving to the next generations.
Well, and all of them, like, they don't have a heat and they don't have a time, right? Usually it's, it's about a medium heat oven is for, cookies, and a really super hot oven is for bread and, things like that. And then it won't say how long to cook it because of course they didn't have temperatures on there, right? It's all by feel. So
and then sometimes they will have things that are no longer sold in the way that they're described. Like they say, use a number 2 can of beans.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like ketchup from before Civil War was like a mushroom fish sauce, and now it's become ketchup of tomato base. But
so I love all that stuff.
Yeah. So what's your favorite thing that you found that way? Yeah. What's your favorite, or like favorite recipe, or
Oh, like man, there's so many interesting ones. Well, so one that's been I'll just talk about one that's been on my mind lately. So evidently there was this kind of apple dumpling that was very popular in Virginia in the from the 1880s to like the 1950s. And you just don't really see it in modern cookbooks. And I'm just trying to figure out what happened to this dumpling like dish. Because it's mentioned a lot, and so it seemed like it was really popular, and so I'm always curious why something falls out of fashion. And so it was called apple pone, Pone.
Okay.
And pone has a very specific meaning in Southern cooking because the pone is a approximation of a Native American word that originally was just for like a cornmeal kind of cake that could be cooked in a number of different ways, and it gets appropriated by Europeans, and they started using it in a different way. And so this apple pone, this is just not a thing now.
Yeah. So is it more like almost like when you make like a jalapeno cornbread with like jalapeno candied on top of it?
No, this was more like a soft cobbler.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever had a cobbler that has a cake-like crust on it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Instead of the pie-like crust.
Right. Yeah.
And I like the pie type crust more.
Yeah.
So it was more like that, kind of like a soft bread dessert.
Okay. With apples in it.
Yeah, definitely with apples.
Yeah. I wonder if apples went through a phase where they just weren't popular, or maybe they weren't even available, and so that's why it fell out of.
Well, 1929 would have caused some effect on that, but
with the depression and
I'm not sure, but I mean, it does show up post-war. So
okay,
but soon it disappears soon after that. Now it may be that it still lives on in family cooking. It just doesn't show up in cookbooks.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, okay, do you prefer doing research in person then with actual cookbooks versus like looking up on archive.org or things like that using the Library of Congress?
Oh yeah. But well, I go back and forth on that because the
Mhm.
reach now, because so much stuff is digitized,
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
that I actually do dig sitting down at a computer and just looking for hours.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was just telling somebody yesterday, you know, if somebody would pay me just to do that, I would
Yeah.
be very happy.
Yeah.
Right.
You too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you think that your background in law has helped you in your research in ways that might not, well, wouldn't help others because they don't have that
Can
background?
affect other people.
Yeah, because practicing law and studying law
Mhm.
and learning about the law, all of those things give you a certain level of discipline.
Mhm.
And so one of my pet peeves right now is in this age of tremendous access to information, you have people that are not careful
Mhm.
and they are just making stuff up
Right.
because it something seems plausible
Mhm.
and they go with it without taking the time to really just verify if that is an accurate telling of that history or the background or whatever. And I'll give you an example.
Exactly. Yeah.
So right now, there are a lot of people saying that Thomas Jefferson's enslaved chef, a guy named James Hemings,
Mhm.
invented macaroni and cheese.
Okay.
And you know, if anybody took 5 minutes to just do some research, they would see that mac and cheese has existed for thousands of years
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
in Italy. Now, James Hemings certainly made mac and cheese because Thomas Jefferson had a mac and cheese Jones,
Mhm. Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that he invented it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you could argue that he made it popular in the U.S. There's, you know,
Right.
you could argue that, but
Mhm.
you know, to say that he invented it is just, you know, it's just not accurate. And so
Right.
I find myself swimming against a tide of kind of misinformation and
Mhm.
kind of sloppy research. And look,
Mhm.
I've made my mistakes too, because I look at some of the stuff in my book that later evidence showed that I was on the wrong track. And so, you know,
Mhm.
so to be true to myself, I've actually created an error page.
Oh.
When you go to my website and you look at my books,
Yeah.
I list the
Yeah.
errors. So, because I want people
Oh.
to
Right.
really get a true sense of history. And I
Yeah.
always think of my books as appetizers
Mhm.
Yeah.
so that people will build on my work. And, you know, the closer we can get to truth, I think the better.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's the same problem I have with like sandwiches, that they say Lord Sandwich was invented the sandwich because no one ever thought to put meat on bread before that. I'm like, yes, they did.
Yeah.
It's so reductionist when they're like, well, in history, all they had was nasty looking stew, and it's like, no, they didn't. They had great meals.
Oh, yeah.
When peasants could only eat bread, cheese, and sliced meat, I'm like,
Gruel.
that sounds like a great meal. Don't say only that's all the peasants had. That's a good meal. So speaking of how well researched, I want to point out that your citation section just in Black Smoke is 265 is 40 pages long. So
Yes.
you
Lots
did
of
your
research.
research.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And the reason for that is I knew that I was saying or writing stuff that people had not either heard
Mhm.
or that they didn't want to believe. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to document everything. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to say, look at what I looked at.
Yeah.
And you can see the conclusions I reached. If you have other information that changes that, fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Put out your book or your article or whatever. But I wanted you to understand how I reached my conclusions. Because again, there are other authors, some quite popular, who are just saying stuff and not documenting it. And you know, as a reader, they like this person, they're going to trust that person. So why would they go spend the extra time to verify if this person is accurately
Right.
telling them that food story? So, you know, that's the end of the story for a lot of people. They're like, oh, so-and-so or chef, whatever said this, so that must be the case.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been true for millennia, right? I mean, you go back and you look at books that were written in mostly in the 19th century is what I'm usually looking at, 1800s. And there's so much misinformation. There's so much, I mean, even about the war, like you're talking about the Reconstruction period. And I've read so many things where, you know, right afterwards, it just happened. It's like reading things about 9/11 right after it happened. There's already misinformation flying around, right? And so reading about the Civil War, depending on what perspective you're reading from, it's that whole idea of people saying that history is not biased, and it absolutely is.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, don't tell me a historical book is not historical fiction in some way. Like,
Yeah.
the author is going to approach it from their perspective, and
Right.
so yeah.
And authors don't know everything, right? So
No.
they're telling you their point of view from the information that they have.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Which, speaking of which, so the gal you found who had cooked for President Ford, was that somebody who she mentioned in your the President's Cabinet, your other book?
No, she's not, because I didn't know about her until after the book came out.
Okay. Yeah.
Like several years after. And she never was employed in the White House. So she is one of the number of people where a president visited someone's home and she cooked the meal for him at that occasion. So,
okay. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I love finding those. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that book? Because because we love historical research and all of that. And I feel like it's not talked about as often. Your barbecue stuff is talked about a lot, but I love the President's Cabinet. It's a fascinating book. So
yeah, so it really came out of researching my book on soul food. I came across a few stories of African Americans who had cooked for our presidents, and it was 6 stories, so that was not enough to write a book because I was just scraps of information here and there. So I just said, well, let me just delve into this and see what I find. And through my research, I identified 150 African Americans who had cooked from George Washington to President Obama at that time.
wow.
And so every president has had an African American cook for them in some capacity, whether it was in the presidential kitchen, whether it was when they traveled by train, yacht, or airplane, or there were times when they would go visit someplace for a lengthy period of time, and a wealthy white family would loan their black cook
Wow.
to the president while they were staying. It was a way to ingratiate themselves to the president. So, so the President's Kitchen Cabinet is the first collective biography of these chefs, and I'm only scratching the surface because a lot of these chefs are unnamed. Like, I have pictures of Black women in the White House kitchen. But they weren't, historians at that time really didn't feel it was necessary to name these Black women.
Right.
And so we have this person in the kitchen, but we have no idea who it is. And then also there was a big fire at the White House in the 1920s, which destroyed a lot of records. So there could have been some employee lists. It would have made sense because they're paying people. But all those things were lost to history. So
yeah, which is so unfortunate. It also sometimes feels on purpose. It's so often like it's interesting what is missing, right? What has been lost to history. So it's 150. Is it all men then?
No. If you were actually to put all of the cooks in the White House in one room, presidential cooks in one room, the majority of them would be Black women.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really only since the 1960s that men have dominated the White House kitchen. And a lot of that was because Jacqueline Kennedy wanted a continental cuisine in the White House. And so white men tended to have that experience.
Right.
Okay.
And so as the Black cooks got phased out, they would hire these classically trained men. And so they would start to dominate the kitchen. But it's overwhelmingly women. And then of the women, most of the women were Black women. And part of this is because presidents before Truman had to pay for their staff out of their own pocket.
Oh.
Okay.
And so they would tend to bring their personal servants with them.
Right.
Because they're used to their cooking, and also they would save money rather than paying on the open market. And a lot of these cooks were enslaved, which they weren't paying at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got a number of Black women in those positions.
That's fascinating. What kinds of things were they cooking? Like, what are some of your favorite things that you've uncovered that they were eating in the White House?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of Southern presidents. So they were eating a lot of fried chicken. Macaroni and cheese is all over the place. As something that you see quite a bit. But there was a lot of Chinese food too.
Yeah.
So Chinese and Japanese food, so like sukiyaki and curry dishes and things like that were very, very popular. So that was unusual to me. I just didn't know that Chinese food or Southeast Asian food was that embraced. But again, these Southerners, so you had a lot of cornbread. They were eating black-eyed peas. They were eating greens. In fact, Southern food is probably like the baseline cuisine of the White House, because people don't think of Washington, D.C. this way, but it's very much a Southern city.
Right.
It was below the Mason-Dixon line. It was carved out of 2 Southern states.
Right.
And so the vibe is Southern in terms of the food.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting. And then in terms of the formal entertaining, it was definitely French.
Okay.
Until very recently.
Like for plating and stuff.
Plating, the types of dishes, so lobster, thermidor, and all, all that kind of stuff was what would serve. So interestingly, though, First Lady Hillary Clinton is the one that kind of changes that trajectory.
Oh.
She says, "No, I want our state dinners, which are the most public presentations of presidential food, to really highlight American ingredients, but have a flavor profile that's a nod to the visiting dignitary." So I'll give you an example. This is the 30th anniversary this year's the 30th anniversary of the state dinner held for President Nelson Mandela.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I wrote about that in the President's book because a Black chef in America created that meal. And so as an example, the main dish was a sesame crusted halibut in a carrot juice broth. And then there were also late summer vegetables with lemongrass and red curry. So those flavors were flavors that were a nod to the people of South Africa.
Yes, yeah.
And showing the Indian and Asian and Black populations, but they used American ingredients.
Right.
So that's just one example.
Interesting.
That is fascinating.
That sounds really good too.
Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Okay. I already asked that one. Okay. This is an important one for me to know. What are some of the best places to go for barbecue in Colorado specifically, since we're all in Colorado?
Yeah. So I really like Pit Fiend in Denver.
Okay.
I think is doing the best overall barbecue right now.
Yeah.
A couple other places in Denver, and then we can go around the state. I also like Smoke, SMOK.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's also a place called Roaming Buffalo, which I really like because Roaming Buffalo does bison and lamb, which I consider Colorado barbecue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think those are really good. In Superior, Colorado, there's a place called Wayne's Smoke Shack.
Okay.
That's excellent. In the Colorado Springs area, and they also have one in Greeley, Rudy's, I think is really good. I've had some good barbecue at Front Range. I think you have a Mission barbecue that's opening up down there. That's a national.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Some other places, let's see. I think there's also a Smoke in Glenwood Springs and Basalt, but I think it's spelled with SMOQUE.
Okay.
Which is also good. Trying to think. Those are and then in Durango. Oh, what's the place in Durango? I cannot believe I'm forgetting it right now. Starts with an S. I can't remember right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's a place in Durango. There were some other places around the state that were pretty good, but they've closed.
Okay.
So those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
Do you feel like Colorado is differentiating itself as a new zone of barbecue?
Unfortunately, no. I think most of the stuff that's opening up in Colorado tends to be just transplanted barbecue from other places.
Right.
That's why I love Roaming Buffalo, because I think even though their barbecue has a Texas vibe, they did try to embrace local proteins.
Right.
And so I've actually been interested in having a barbecue contest to create a signature barbecue Colorado barbecue dish.
Oh, you should. Yes. That would be amazing.
I'd cook with juniper.
Juniper? Yeah. Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah. That'd be very interesting to see like what would come out of that, how it would be different.
Right.
Because one of the things again that you talked about at your presentation was the difference between like North Carolina or even the Carolina barbecue versus Texas versus
how many zones do you consider there to be for areas of barbecue?
Let's see. Okay, let's just go east to west.
Sure.
So you've got Virginia, East Carolina, West Carolina, South Carolina, Northern Florida, Deep South, which I think is I'm lumping in Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama kind of together. Mississippi, St. Louis, Kentucky, Southside Chicago, East Texas, South Texas, Central Texas, West Texas, Kansas. Okay, 16. Now we're at Kansas City, Santa Maria, California, and kind of Pacific Northwest. So to me, they're 18.
Interesting.
18.
That's cool.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is how many times you differentiated it within the states. So
Yeah.
East, West, South Carolina, right? And then of course Texas, because Texas is so huge, it's going to have different.
I think you had mentioned in your talk that the Appalachia side, so that'd be west side of Carolinas, was tomato based, right?
Yes.
Because they developed a little bit later.
Yes.
How does that differentiate from coastal and southern and South Carolina?
So South Carolina tends to have a couple of things going on. So in West Carolina, North Carolina, it's pork shoulder dominates, but in South Carolina, they do still have the whole hog cooking as well as the pork shoulder. And then they tend to have more mustard sauces. So in addition to the tomato-based vinegar sauces and the vinegar only, they will also have a third kind of mustard sauce. And there's various theories as to how that shows up there. But I got to tell you, the mustard sauces are growing on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really digging those.
Yeah. Was that not something you enjoyed to start?
No, I was just into the tomato-based sauces, especially in Kansas City, kind of thick, sweet sauce.
Okay.
So I just had an attitude about the mustard sauces, but I had really good ones lately.
Yeah. That's what I'm always telling my kids is you'll learn to like it.
Yep. Keep trying it. All right. So what is the most unique barbecued item you've ever eaten?
All right. So I have had barbecued pig testicles.
Okay.
Well, it's okay.
That's pretty Coloradoan.
Yeah. But these were in Mississippi, actually.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I've had barbecued alligator. I would say that those are the two. Yeah, those are the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
The barbecue alligator was, I had it 2 times. One was kind of tough, but the other one was very succulent. I just thought that was really good.
Interesting.
Oh, it came back to me. Serious Texas barbecue in Durango. So sorry to jump out of.
There's an S. Yep.
Yes. What's the strangest thing you've barbecued?
Oh, I'm really boring when it comes to barbecue.
Yeah.
So I've just done ribs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you done
Ribs
buffalo?
and lamb. Ribs, lamb, chicken, and sausage. That's all I've ever barbecued.
Okay. Yeah. Bison. I guess bison is buffalo, right?
Yeah.
It's considered the same thing around here.
Yeah.
Has anybody done any antelope in the area? Since that would be almost a sheep deer in its texture.
Yeah. So the closest, roaming buffalo, they have a venison sausage.
Okay.
So that's the closest that I've seen. I don't know anybody who's actually grilling those other meats, those other cuts.
Or elk.
Yeah.
I wonder if antelope would what's Argentinian barbecue called? The sloped steel.
Oh yeah, asado.
Yeah. Interesting.
No. When I went to Argentina, it was all beef, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all beef. I don't remember eating anything else. They love them. They love them some cows down there.
Good wine too.
Yep, very good wine.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've been to Argentina for barbecue. Any other countries? Different barbecue?
Yeah, so American barbecue is popping up all over the place. So most recently, I've had it in Ireland, in Dublin.
Ooh.
I've had it in several Middle East countries. So Egypt, Kuwait, Oman, United Arab Emirates. Let's see, where else? Oh, those are the places. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And was it mostly beef in all those places?
Yeah. Because in the Middle East, yes, definitely. In Dublin, it wasn't, but beef dominates because that's the kind of cut of meat right now, brisket.
Okay.
So everybody, because they're looking at American representations of it on YouTube and TV, and so Texas barbecue is the sexy barbecue right now, and brisket.
Yeah.
And it's a bravado aspect, right? If you can conquer brisket, then you got good skills.
Right. Right.
It's just unfortunate that brisket is very limited because there's only 2 per cow.
Okay.
Right. So it's the least sustainable barbecue item. That's the one that's most popular.
Right. Yeah. So we'll have to get something else going.
That's right.
replace it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and is Texas barbecue, is that sauced? Are all these the ones, or some of them you said were not sauced, right? Some of them are. It's just about the dry rub.
Yeah. So Central Texas is because you have to understand the history of Central Texas barbecue. So this is a legacy of Central European immigrants coming to the U.S. and they were primarily butchers. And so they were opening up meat shops, and whatever they couldn't sell, like the odd cuts of meat and other things, they would just smoke them and sell them to local ranch hands and oil rig workers, and all that kind of stuff. So that's really the genesis of kind of the Central Texas barbecue stuff. Now, technically, they're smoking meat. They're not really barbecuing it.
Right.
Right.
But I value my life, so I'm not going to go roll up into Texas and say, y'all aren't really barbecuing.
Right.
And so that's why it's not sauced, right? Because the idea was it was just smoked meat, and typically you got some pickles, a wedge of cheddar cheese, and some crackers as side dishes to that. Then later you get the German salads, potato salad, coleslaw, things like that. So yeah, so that's what it sounds like. But if you go to other parts of Texas, you know, it's definitely like in East Texas, which is more dominated by African Americans. It's definitely more sauced.
Okay.
In fact, usually the barbecue is chopped up and sauced for sandwiches and things like that. So it's just different cultural influences.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So when you were talking about your zones, is that mostly based off of how they cook the meat, or also the side dishes, how they vary?
I primarily base it on the meats and the sauces, but there is definitely a side dish culture.
Yeah.
And sometimes very unique to different places.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like what? What are some different?
Well, you know, like in North Carolina, they have hush puppies, which I think most people would associate with fried fish.
Yes.
But in the Carolinas, that's a side dish.
Right.
South Carolina. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. We're just audibly
Okay.
getting hungry.
South Carolina, you've got a hash tradition. So there's a dish of rice with kind of like mixed with meat and some sauce, and they call that barbecue hash. There's different types of coleslaw. You know, sometimes it's the more familiar coleslaw that we're used to. In other places, it's a really fine dice.
Okay.
With maybe just some vinegar to put together and a few spices. And then in the Midwest, French fries are all over the place when it comes to barbecue.
Right.
And you don't see that in other places.
Yeah.
Trying to think what are other examples. Yeah. And then in East Texas, for example, because of the proximity to Louisiana, you have a lot more Creole side dishes. So dirty rice, you know, your barbecue might come with dirty rice or a boudin sausage, things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So when you've looked at barbecue, so you said American barbecue is influencing other countries. Have other countries influenced our barbecue?
Like in the recent years?
Yeah.
Recently. Yeah, I guess more recently. I mean, way back. Yeah. But
yeah, so you're starting to see, so I'm going to be very specific in what I'm calling barbecue. So to me, barbecue is cooked over a pit for a lengthy period of time. So what we're calling Korean barbecue and Japanese barbecue and other things, I don't consider that barbecue.
Okay.
And you're meaning in that case like yakitori, a skewer. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people disagree. They just think if you're cooking meat over fire, that's barbecue. I really disagree with that, but some people I really respect argue the opposite. So given that, what you're starting to see is a lot of kind of Latino influence. So with like barbacoa, like the barbecue of South Texas and Mexico, the barbacoa, cow's heads, cabeza, cabrito, goat. You're starting to see that type of cooking and seasoning. A lot is happening with Asian fusion. So you're starting to see Thailand, Laos, and other places. People here are kind of mixing those flavors and cooking techniques and making really, really amazing barbecue. So you're starting to see that pop up.
Yeah. Because I've had like, so I grew up with a friend who her father is Filipino. And so like for his, I want to say it was like his 50th, and he had just gotten his doctorate. They did a pig roast, or like a pit, where they bury the pig and everything. And then there was a whole thing about eating the pig's eyes was very important. Whoever got the eyes, and then, and the tongue. and like he got to have the cheek, because that was like one of the most, tender bits or something like that, and the ears. I remember eating the pig's ears, and that was just fascinating.
You know what else is really succulent is the pigtail. I mean, because it's
tail.
almost full of fat, and it's just, man.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So would you consider that barbecue? Is that bearing?
No, I don't consider that barbecue, because usually when it's cooked that way, it's usually sealed with a protective wrapping of vegetation or other things like that. So when you eat that food, it doesn't have and I'm saying this in a positive way,
right?
It doesn't have the funk of barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
It's delicious. It's falling apart. It's tender. It's all of that stuff, but it doesn't have the funk of barbecue.
Right.
So that's why I distinguish it, because it's really because of that protective layer. To me, barbecue is cooking meat unprotected over some heat source.
Okay. Awesome. Do you find a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of pop-ups lately, like food trucks and people off the side of the road that have barbecue they're doing amazing things with it. Have you found any of those locally that you've enjoyed?
Not really. Not for barbecue. I've been finding them for other types of food.
Yeah.
But there's one place in Denver called Off the Bone, who I've worked with them on certain events.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not finding a lot of great barbecue stuff like that that's better than the restaurants. Except, you know what? I take that back. There's one place that I think is really interesting in Denver. It's called Barbosa Food Truck, and his wife, the guy who owns it, they weave in a lot of Asian flavors and other stuff. They do unusual stuff, but his wife is I want to say a trained pastry chef. And so she'll do some interesting things. Like one time she had a Vietnamese cheesecake.
Interesting.
That was on the menu.
Okay.
So, Barbosa Food Truck is an exception.
Yeah. I wonder how that would influence Vietnamese. Like, what is a Vietnamese cheesecake?
We'll have like a French influence, right?
French influence, and it had a pronounced coffee flavor.
Okay.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about recipes that get lost over the ages and the fact that nobody can cook anymore. What advice would you give to a younger audience, to younger meaning anywhere over the age of 10 to 30, but what would you advise them, someone who's just deciding to get into cooking, barbecue, anything? What do they need to do first in order to improve themselves as a human being?
So I think fortunately there's some really good books out right now. So there's a book out called he calls himself Meathead.
Okay.
And his book is really good about breaking down the basic science of barbecue. So I think that's a good foundational text. And then depending on what part of the country you are, I would then start reading. I'm a big advocate of kind of embracing your local culture.
Yeah.
So I would start reading books that reflect your local culture or whatever type of barbecue you like.
Right.
Start reading, and then it's just really a matter of practicing. That's the whole key, because one of the most important parts of good barbecue is fire management. And once you understand how to manage fire, and then the science of how that works with meat, then I think you're on your way. Like I read Meathead's book, and I have to say that my latest barbecue was the best that I've ever made, because I applied some of the lessons from his book. And I also read a book by a guy named Matt Horn, and then another one by a guy named Kevin Bledsoe. So I just kind of read all these books. And then Stephen Rachlin, he's written a lot of barbecue books.
Okay.
And then the other part I would say is just go on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much good content on YouTube.
Yeah.
But I think that the thing is just to pay attention, take notes, and figure out based on what equipment you have, what makes the most sense for you. And then you just got to get out there and practice.
Yeah. And hit thrift stores and find original cookbooks.
That's right.
Yeah. So I have a lot of old barbecue books, which are really interesting, from the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
So following that same line, what would be two side dishes that are easier than people think, but if you showed up and that was offered, that would impress you, and that they had tried?
Yeah, no, I mean, coleslaw and potato salad for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, as an African American, these should not include any raisins at all.
Yep.
I'm just saying that. But
Are apples okay though?
no,
At times? Okay.
no, man.
Okay. Just checking.
No fruit. So,
Okay.
yeah. So those things are. Well, let me take that back. I have had a good apple slaw. I will say
Okay.
that. I've had a good one. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and that would be different in a slaw, right? Because then you're looking at fresh flavors and
right. And they julienned it, so it was
Right.
consistent with kind of what you think. Like
Sure.
it wasn't like chunks. It wasn't like a fruit salad.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the two that I always look for when I have
Mhm.
barbecue. I know beans is another standard, but I could take beans or leave them. But if
Sure.
you have coleslaw and potato salad, I'm pretty happy, dude.
Yeah. I just saw in Britain they like at donut shops they're doing like donut stuffed with baked beans, and I'm like,
Are you serious?
yeah, that's breakfast food for them. So they're like, sure, put it in my donut. I'm like, oh, come on, man.
I don't know, man. I mean,
well.
we do the Luther burger over here where you make a hamburger with donuts as buns.
Yep.
Oh,
I've
really?
seen
I
those
haven't seen
at the
that.
fairs. They had them at the Minnesota State Fair too,
Oh,
which is
of
like
course.
a
Yeah.
fried food heaven.
Yes.
But
Yeah, these state fairs, they're
yeah.
no joke.
No.
Yeah.
A lot
And
of
the best thing
interesting
they had
stuff
was
has
not
been
fried
invented.
though was that pickle that was wrapped in cream cheese and
And
pancetta or prosciutto. That was
Prosciutto.
good.
It was really
Yeah, not
good.
fried, just straight cream cheese and prosciutto.
I'm
That
sure
was
they
good.
also had it fried.
I'm
but-
sure they did.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, but that was good.
It was
Yeah.
really good.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's actually something I'll kind of do now, like
Yeah,
at home.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pickle on a stick. Yeah.
Yeah. But it has to be a dill pickle. I like
Yeah.
the dill pickles versus.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I had a question with that. Go ahead.
About sides.
No.
What is a not so secret ingredient that pitmasters are not using in their sauce?
Yes.
That they should be using their sauce. So you don't have to give us away the big secret, but what is a not so secret ingredient that should be in more sauces, like whiskey or something that is not used as much as it ought to?
Oh, okay. Like I'm trying to. Okay, I'll try not to give away too many secrets because I have my own secret
Of course.
sauce. I refuse to answer that question. I'm sorry,
Okay. Understood.
but it's an intriguing question. I'm just
Yeah.
when you're sworn to secrecy about something,
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is
Like I ended up getting a couple years ago barbecue. I forget where he's from. I think he's from Chicago, but he had all the different types of sauces from like 5 different zones, including. So over a week, I did like a white sauce because I'd never had it, never even heard of it. And I know you don't. I know it's not. Is it really a sauce? And then I took all of them and made a big old spreadsheet to figure out what is the perfect sauce to kind of what am I missing, and just being able to notice what's the difference of your tomato ratios in particular zones, and it was just fascinating.
Oh man, you should write about that. You should write about that journey.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, that'd be fun. Might have to do that again.
I
I have to cook online.
Let's say then you'd have to do it again, and we'd have to.
Oh darn.
Do more barbecue. It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember what it was. I wanted to ask you about being on Netflix on the Netflix show. Remind me what the name of that was, and is it still on there? I forget.
Yeah. So it was on. It's called High on the Hog.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was how African American cuisine transformed America.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a 4-part series that's season 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts in West Africa, and this kind of tells aspects of the African American food story. I was on the 3rd episode talking about presidential chefs, and then the 4th episode talking about barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
It was renewed for a 2nd season.
Excellent.
Unfortunately, I don't have Netflix, so I haven't seen it yet. I have to find a friend, but I've heard that people enjoyed the 2nd season. I don't know if the 2nd one had 4 episodes as well or not.
Okay.
But yeah.
Very cool.
I love following things like that. We watched one that was about cheese. That was just cheese all over.
Yeah, that one's on Amazon.
That was amazing.
I think.
Yeah. So did you enjoy that experience being interviewed on there?
Yeah, it was cool, and it was a real boost for my career because that it came out during the pandemic, and that was one of the most highly watched shows on Netflix that year.
Awesome.
And so that introduced me to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah.
When are you gonna do like a somebody feed Phil show yourself and start just touring around America?
Yes, eating barbecue.
Yes.
There you go.
Well, Andrew and Patricia, I have to tell you, TV people aren't convinced that anybody will watch me.
They're wrong.
Yeah, because I've pitched several shows, and I keep getting told that I'm too educational, which I think is code for you're too boring.
You're not boring.
No, yeah, you were one of the best presenters I've ever seen, especially at a writing conference.
Yes,
like,
which can be very dry at times.
Yes, they can be hit or miss. No, you were one of the best speakers I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
It was wonderful. You made people laugh. You made people engaged with your content. I mean, it was such a good presentation.
So we beg to differ with the studios.
Yeah.
So it's I just don't see it happening because I keep pitching shows and it just goes off the rails for some reason. Actually, I was pitching a Colorado cooking show, which would have been like somebody feeds Phil, but just Colorado.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And I had an initial meeting. I thought it went well, and then I got ghosted.
Well, it might be time to go to YouTube.
I was just gonna say you started a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
And that's the cool thing about this time that we're living in as creatives. It's much easier. I shouldn't say it's so easy. Mm-hmm. It's easier to create content and put it out there.
It is.
Right.
Exactly.
There's also been so many more people who have left the traditional big markets and gone home, and they're out of Hollywood now. They're like, but I still want to do what I'm doing, but I'm in my little state. And they can because they already have the skills. That's why we went indie as authors, was because we had the skills. We just didn't want to invest the time. And then the pandemic happened, and we're like, well, we got time now, and so we started doing it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I would highly encourage you to.
Yeah.
We'll watch.
Yes.
Well, thank you. At least I'll have
at least 2 subscribers. We promise.
Yes. And anybody watching this now, leave us comments. Tell Adrian how amazing he is. So let's see. You've got 3 or 4 books. Remind me.
So I've got 3 books. There are 2 books on the way. My next book will be on the history of Asian American presidential chefs.
Okay.
They've had the strongest representation in the presidential kitchen aside from African Americans.
Right.
Yes.
Going back to the days of Theodore Roosevelt. So I'm going to tell that story. That story's never been told. And I'm co-authoring it with a college classmate of mine. And this is going to be more of a true cookbook. So this is going to have 70 recipes. And I'm working on the history part of it. And my co-author, who's a trained chef, she's going to do the cookbook part of it.
Interesting.
Excellent.
So I think it'll be really, really fun.
Absolutely.
And then the other one that will eventually come out, it's going to be a little bit because I have to do more research and stuff, is a history of Black street food vendors.
Ooh.
Which dates back to the 1600s in this country. So I want to talk about how they repped West Africa, the foods they introduced, and the foods they adopted from other cultures and popularized, things like hot tamales.
Right.
And then
here's barbecue itself, right? Because it was borrowed from the Native American population originally.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then this is a really cool thing. Between 1880 to 1920, people would listen to African Americans either singing or rhyming to get customers' attention, and they put them down to sheet music. And so I have 100 of those across various cities.
Wow.
So I'm hoping to get a book deal where I can put out a compilation of those street cries, and I would narrate them and then hire people to sing them. Yeah. And so you would know what it was like to be in New Orleans in 1900, walking around and with all these people trying to get you to buy their stuff.
If the publisher didn't pick up that portion, if you retain that, you could kickstart that so easily.
Yeah. I would think so too.
Yeah, and there's so much special edition happening right now where a lot of authors are not getting their hardback special edition because the publishers don't want to invest. And they're like, I can take the hit and still make $10 on every sale, and Kickstarter, and the thing will fund. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to do that. And then, another thing I was thinking about maybe is just doing a limited podcast.
Yeah.
Where I'd go city by city and just talk about it and then have some people sing the cries. And look, I'm just going to put it out there. If Beyonce wants to do a street cry on Lemonade, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh man, that would be amazing. Yeah. If you get a variety of voices and get some celebrities involved and stuff, that would take it up so fast. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's what I love. More audiobooks now are doing some fun things like that, where it's
interactive,
and doing music and things. Yeah.
Are you finding print books are doing the same? Are they like putting QR codes in there so people can go to other content? Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing that in the indie market. Yes. Not so much in the traditional market.
It certainly could be done.
Yes.
I mean, there's QR codes are easy, but
people have playlists. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yes.
Is a lot of authors, especially in the fantasy, they'll connect with they'll make a playlist of like, here's what I was listening to when I was writing the scene, or here's what, here's the, if you play this playlist behind while you're reading this section,
including traditional authors.
Nicholas
Eames wrote Kings of the Wild. It's an 80s fantasy, an 80s hair band that tours to fight, and they put all their fights like in stadiums so they can fight monsters. And he's done a whole 80s music playlist that will take you as long to get through as the book, and so you can just listen to hair metal while you listen to the whole book.
Fantasy punk. It's amazing. It's really
that
fun.
is really creative. That's interesting.
And he's traditional.
Okay.
So I think as people kind of break out of the traditional mold and get more
audio exploded because of COVID too, because there were some audiobooks, but then people demanded it, and so all the libraries started picking up all the audiobooks. Everybody started listening, and now you just have a plethora of audiobooks that were okay before that, and there were some good ones, but now they're all really well done.
Nice. Okay, that's good to know.
Absolutely. So where can we find you and your books?
So I'm on most platforms as Soul Food Scholar. So if you type those words in, you're probably going to find me. Soulfoodscholar.com is my website. You can find my books at the library, online. You can also order them directly from me. And if you do so, I'm so appreciative of you ordering the book that I'll autograph it any way you want. So if you want me to sign that I couldn't have written the book without you, I'm happy to do that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Remember, direct from author is always best for our wallets. So.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So and all of my books are published by the University of North Carolina Press. And I just want to tell your audience, don't sleep on academic presses as an option for your books, because they're invested in you over the long haul. So with a commercial publisher, if your book doesn't blow up in 3 to 6 months, they probably are gonna they're the piece. But these so all of my books are still in print.
Amen. Awesome.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that, about academic presses. So nonfiction, right? Specifically if you're writing nonfiction. And
correct. There may be some academic presses that do fiction, but they usually are nonfiction.
Right. Yeah. So did you graduate from there? Is that why?
No, it's just I was going to the Southern Food Conference and I was talking about my books. I was thinking, hey, at some point I just said to anybody who would listen, I'm working on a history of soul food. And so I gave a short talk on what red drinks mean to Black people at this Southern Food Conference. And it was a 10-minute talk. And this editor from the University of North Carolina Press came up after my talk and said, hey, you mentioned you're working on a book. I want to talk to you about that.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and they're beautiful books. Very,
very well
very
laid out.
nicely published and very,
they do a good job. So I'm grateful.
Yeah. Well, not in this one, but in the, there's photos and everything. Beautiful.
Very well
beautifully done. Yeah. But I got, because in the kitchen cabinet one, there's photos as well. I love all of that. So well, I mean, I guess we're out of time.
We're out of time.
So
it's midnight on the East Coast now.
It is midnight on the East Coast now. It doesn't feel like it, but thank you so much for joining us, Adrian. This is wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate you all. And best of luck to you in your writing endeavors.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And everybody's watching. There are links below to everything that Adrian just mentioned. Definitely follow. Tell us real quick what your YouTube channel looks like.
Oh, so my YouTube channel needs some investment. It's the Soul Food Scholar. That's my channel. But I definitely need to up my game in terms of adding content and stuff. So that is definitely on the to-do list for this year.
Okay. So, well, what can they find on there that's there now?
Oh, so right now you have clips of my presentations. Then I have playlists of different kind of recipe videos and other things. So if you wanted to get into cooking Southern food and soul food, there's some clips there. So mainly my presentations and some talks that I've done, things like that.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's very interesting.
Oh, and I forgot. And also a few of my, what I call takeout reveals. So I'll go to a place and, you get usually a styrofoam takeout box. So I'll slowly open it up and you can see what I'm eating.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, next week we've got Ben and Tori Tekken on for our interview.
They'll actually be here in person.
Yep, we'll do an
live
in-person
and in
interview
person.
with them.
Yes, very excited.
Yeah, and that's Late Night Book Chat.
Yes, yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you so much again, Adrian, and everybody be sure to follow him and the amazing research that he is uncovering and doing. This is
like,
so
follow,
important.
subscribe, notification bell.
All of those things.
All the good things.
All the good things. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.